And bear in mind that Mitsubishi has one of the winningest histories, the Paris-Dakar, and the Dakar Rally, I should say, driving these vehicles and the later versions of them.
Everyone knows who follows us on Twitter or Instagram knows I give him hell for him liking Mitsubishis. And most of them are terrible. With the exception, I will give some exceptions here. Back in, the 80s into the 90s, Mitsubishi, they were cutting edge. They did things like the Galant VR4, which was a mid-size all-wheel drive vehicle that was turbo engine with a manual transmission.
Yeah.
And it was sort of cool looking. And then, of course, there was the Starion and the Conquest, which was the Chrysler version of it.
The Evo.
And then the Evo, of course, the Evo. Everyone knows about the Evo.
Yeah.
And then there was the Stealth and the 3000 GT VR4. So they did some cool things. But the difference from Mitsubishi as opposed to everybody else, like, for example, a Z32.
Okay, here we go.
That is a cohesive car. It's a cohesive thought that's translated to a cohesive design, which is engineered in a very... The best way to put it together is it's a composed vehicle on the road. Everything comes together.
Yeah.
As if someone has literally carved it from one billet of aluminum. No Mitsubishi does that. Maybe an Evo, but the VR4 didn't do that. The 3000 GT VR4, it felt like a bunch of parts put together. The Galant VR4 felt the same way. These, I think, were a bit different. These were the real thing.
Yes.
And as such, many people you and I know, Aaron Robinson is on his 8th. Jeff Glucker's got one, which he's totally overlanded. And then, of course, my healthcare wife, she owns exactly this vehicle. It's blue. It's a two-door. I think hers is a V6, though.
And bear in mind that Mitsubishi has one of the winningest histories, the Paris-Dakar, and the Dakar Rally, I should say, driving these vehicles and the later versions of them. They're super rugged. They were not built to a high-end, level. It gave people an off-road capable vehicle that competed with everything from Range Rover to Mercedes-Benz and anything else that was out there. Really, the only downside to these was lack of power. They just didn't have a lot of horsepower compared to the American, at the time, the Cherokee and all that. But they made up for it.
Was that what kept them from being patrols and Land Cruisers?
Yeah, I think so. I think that because they didn't have that oomph, except overseas, they did have this crazy turbocharged version of a later version of this, which was just incredible. Never really made it over here. But these were solid, and if you can find one, they're pretty well screwed together.
So if you were to take a stab in the dark, what was the big reason why Mitsubishi came from doing stuff like this, which even I will admit, fantastic technology and was perfect for the mission, to now they are cars for people with bad credit?
What's
one reason for that?
Profits. They started losing money on building Monteros and selling them here. Remember, they were way ahead of everybody else when they brought in the third generation Montero, which had four-wheel independent suspension. It wasn't a truck.
Yeah.
It was basically, unibody setup, and it had just tons of fantastic technology, and Americans weren't buying them.
But they were part of a larger company. Mitsubishi Estate did everything from this to stereos.
Yeah, of course they did. But I'm just referring to cars in America.
Okay.
And why here we're not getting the great stuff. They just weren't able to make any of their vehicles click. On top of that, their partnership with, at the time, Chrysler wasn't necessarily the best one out there. They partnered up actually with Hyundai as well, and they built a platform with Chrysler, Hyundai, and that thing was a terrible platform. But it went into a million different cars. It went into half the stuff that later on FCA started producing, right? Including the Dodge Journey and the Dodge Caliber and the Jeep Patriot and the Compass and all those other. This is the same platform. Hyundai used it as well. And just every single time Mitsubishi got involved with these things, it seems like they got the short end of the stick. They were like the little brother who kept getting beat up. And their magic disappeared. Once they got rid of the Evo and they got rid of all-wheel drive and they got rid of, and when I say all-wheel drive, I mean all-wheel drive with a turbo, not a CVT hooked up to a turbo, which negates the whole thing of having a turbo in my mind. They got rid of the magic. They suddenly went to profits. They wanted to make the company float a little bit more, and they wanted to take away the imagination and the fire.
I would
And
argue it's a function of chasing volume. When you try to go on the race to the bottom, you're always going to lose. But they're not the only ones that have lost on the race to the bottom. And you look at what Audi and Mercedes and BMW have done over the past 10 years. They tried to come into this country with the $32,000, or before that it was the $29,995 Audi A3 or Mercedes CLA. And they're getting away from that because they realize the race to the bottom, it only means you go out of business. And Mitsubishi, I think, unfortunately, has learned that lesson hard.